approved for treatment for osteoporosis with anti-fracture efficacy in a large number of the patients recruited for the hard endpoint. So in this UK guideline, denosumab is positioned as 1A drug for osteoporosis. You may appreciate the other bisphosphonate like alendronate, evandoronate, risedronate, zolendronate. In addition to this bisphosphonate, this guideline positions romolizumab and teriparatide. Having shown such a data of these agents in osteoporosis guideline, how about the bisphosphonate on the rheumatoid arthritis? So this is a very old study, but you can appreciate here. The patient, rheumatoid arthritis, 105 patients were recruited. To look at the primary endpoint is the bone mineral density at 12 months. Placebo versus, in this case, amiodarone. As well as the bone mineral density, you can see here that they looked at the erosion score here, joint space narrowing score here. You can compare placebo versus bisphosphonate. There is no change at all. Again, showing you that bisphosphonate did not work at well to prevent joint destruction, erosion, joint space narrowing in rheumatoid arthritis. This is old, but no other study than this was shown up to date. Why? Bisphosphonate does not work in preventing erosion or joint destruction in rheumatoid arthritis because it is working on the physiological phase of osteoporosis, osteoclast interaction. In case of rheumatoid arthritis, you can appreciate here a lot of cytokines, TNF-alpha, IL-6, IL-17, stimulating synovial fibroblasts to produce rank-ligand by binding rank-ligand to osteoclast precursor right here. Then accelerate the differentiation from inactivate osteoclast to active osteoclasts to make erosion in rheumatoid arthritis. This is not physiological but pathological condition in rheumatoid arthritis. So we need to change mind, not bisphosphonate, but this story is true. Blockade of rank-ligand may be valid in rheumatoid arthritis. That is the initial idea. In addition to that, we found that in collagen-induced mouse model, this is the tissue. You may appreciate the osteoclast formation is only observed with rank-ligand plus TNF, not TNF alone, IL-6 alone, TNF and IL-6 combination, suggesting that osteoclast differentiation in inflammatory condition really needed rank-ligand in addition to cytokines such as TNF. So these results may suggest that another interesting idea that osteoclast is playing a role in physiological condition, particularly relating to osteoporosis. However, in inflammatory condition like rheumatoid arthritis, the another bad osteoclasts is there. That is called, we name, by arthritis-associated osteoclastogenic macrophages, that is ATOM cells. So we can illustrate now. In pathological conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis, many inflammatory cells go into the joint space to stimulate a variety of cells, including those cells. The monocyte is activated by TNF-alpha, producing TNF-alpha and activated by MCSF, becoming atom cells, arthritis-associated osteoclastogenic macrophages, to differentiate into the osteoclast. You can appreciate in final stage, the rank ligand and rank interaction should be required. If we can intervene this rank ligand by monoclonal, such as denosumab, may be beneficial. So this is the hypothesis. Rank ligand may play a role. So this is denosumab. I would like to skip a little bit earlier. Again, the cost of denosumab, $200 per 6 months to 3 months. In Japan, only 10 to 30% of the costs are paid by the patients. So this is $20 per 6 months. Very cost effective. So in order to test the efficacy, we randomized to receive denosumab every 6 months, 3 months, 2 months placebo. To look at the joint erosion, you may appreciate here in placebo, there is a progression of disease, joint damage. However, every 6 months orange, every 3 months blue, and every 2 months green, you can statistically significantly inhibit the progression of erosion in this disease. There is only little adverse event right here, no infections at all. So this is safety good as well. So in order to extend this phase 2 trial, we did phase 3 trials. The regulatory authority denied every 2 months. That is too frequent. So as a result in phase 3, we did every 6 months, every 3 months, and placebo. Again, the erosion was statistically significantly inhibited compared to placebo right here. Every 6 months green, and every 3 months light green here. Again, you may appreciate this, the right figure, denosumab does not change at all joint space narrowing progression. So this agent is working on only erosion. That is one limitation, but still the probability plot of the change in bone erosion, 70% in placebo. However, you can use denosumab every 6 months. This is going up to over 80% every 3 months, 86.3%. This is the final slide, and we can show you that this is the Japan College Rheumatology guideline for RA. The initial phase MTX, the second biological agent rather than JAK because of the cost and safety. The third phase, bio or JAK. But you may appreciate here this orange box. We can put anti-ligand monoclonal antibody denosumab from the phase 1 to phase 3, every phase. So this is our experience in the clinical trial, supporting the use of anti-ligand antibody that is a cost-effective treatment for patients with joint destruction, progressive joint destruction. This is the take-home message. Thank you for your attention. Efficacy and safety denosumab approved in Japan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Tekuchi. Please join us on the dais.
Oh, okay.
If anyone has any questions.
So, something that we have been following about the band part. So, my question is, did you specify or did you look into which subsets of rheumatoid, seropositive, ACPA positive?
We include all. However, we divided the patient with seropositive and seronegative. This efficacy is much more prominent in seropositive because in placebo arm with seropositive, the joint destruction is much more rapid compared to seronegative. So the efficacy is much more prominent in seropositive subset of patients. Thank you for your question.
So the next next question comes, when do you place this drug? So when the erosions are taking place, so first identification
Yes.
that phase and then introduction of the drug at that phase rather than when it is.
Yes. If the patients have one erosion at least, this drug is much more efficacy, much more a prominent efficacy over the patient without erosion. Because the patient with one erosion at least is much more progressor in terms of the much more rapid progression of the new erosion after that. So the patient with one erosion, that is the timing to introduce this drug.
So if the chair permits, last question, again a very brief question. If I have a patient of preclinical RA, but there is erosion with ACPA positivity not manifesting, what is my temptation to use this drug to prevent that erosion?
Yeah.
Because ACPA can be without clinically manifested.
Yeah, I think it's a very good to use this drug. Cost benefit, and yeah, may block the new erosion after that.
So, sir, if I may ask one question. Since denosumab has no impact, from what I understand, on disease activity.
That's right.
And since that is obviously for a patient whose disease activity can be controlled, considering that we have very effective drugs to control disease activity, where would you place that? Would you only consider denosumab in patients who have uncontrolled disease with the usual standard of care now, at this point?
Yes. In this clinical trial, we enrolled the patients on MTX with moderate disease activity, not high. And we can use any combination of conventional synthetic DMARD on MTX in order to control the disease. So in that control of disease activity, we can prevent the joint erosion by denosumab. So this drug is not aiming for disease control, but stopping the erosion.
So another question that I have, that is from the osteoporosis trials. It has been noticed that with discontinuation of denosumab, there is usually after the 6 months there is a steep increase in the risk of fractures. So with that setting, especially in a country like ours where compliance tends to be an issue, would you still recommend, what was the impact on BMD and fractures in these patients?
Yeah, basically we need to continue to use denosumab. If you stop denosumab, you can add the bisphosphonate for systemic osteoporosis point of view.
So your own article about IL-6 inhibition and prevention of osteoporosis, right, was a landmark way. So do you think when we use TNF and methotrexate there and we have erosions, it is there that denosumab will work? But if we are using IL-6 pathway as a monotherapy, we may not require denosumab?
Either IL-6 receptor blockade or anti-TNF. There is a subset of patients progressing rapidly erosion in a small part of, but there is. So in that case, a disease control is well by anti-TNF or anti-IL-6 receptor. However, the erosion is progressing. Then you can use denosumab on the anti-TNF or anti-IL-6 receptor.
So please go ahead.
Yeah, just one question. As you said that denosumab can be combined in the treatment algorithm of RA with any DMARDs.
Yes.
So when it was combined in Japan along concomitantly with other biological DMARDs like anti-TNF.
Yes.
So was there any infection risk?
No increase in infection risk. No further by adding denosumab, because this agent is in combination with MTX. There is no signal at all for increasing the infection, and in our clinical experience, when add denosumab onto anti-TNF or anti-IL-6, there is no increase for infection. That is the good profile of this drug.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tekuchi. I now call upon Dr. Vinod Ravindran for his talk.
So good evening, everyone, and thank you for staying up till the very last. And yeah, so this is the first disclaimer. So I'm from this city. And the second disclaimer is that whatever I'm going to discuss, I have no first-hand experience at all. And I always rationalize the thin peasants, though I'm grateful for all the people who are present here, because they have actually read Sir William Osler's advice that what you can read up by the night, don't wait hours of daylight listening to that. So now, to make it very easy, next year nothing much is going to be exciting as far as new biological agents for rheumatology is concerned. So this is, you can see here that musculoskeletal disorders related new biological development in phase 2, 3 and phase 3 studies is only 4%. Okay, so major thrust you can see is oncology and of course cardiovascular, immune-mediated other diseases are not rheumatological. So, but still there are few exciting molecules and I will discuss few of them. And then my third disclaimer is that I have great difficulty in pronouncing the names of these biological agents. Right. So the first one is to targeting the granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor, and you have several depending on the pathway you are going to be using. And just to sort of highlight, if you consider the biological and pathological aspects of the disease, ranging from in the joints, the biology we are interested in, it has an exciting role to play. So these are a few of the things which are, a few of the molecules which are under development. And you can see the studies phases over here, and you got some of these exciting sort of agents here. The crux from the efficacy related data is that they are efficacious compared to placebo. And of course, because they are still at stage 2, 3, there are no head-to-head trials with other of the proven agents in rheumatoid arthritis, but there you are. Okay, and here again you see a lot of agents in that particular category. Yeah. Then in rheumatoid arthritis you have what is called next generation anti-TNF antibody, and then you have this agent, and I'm not again pronouncing the name. It is, my chairs probably would. Exactly. Thank you. So now you got. So what happens? This is interesting. So you compare the conventional IgG antibodies, and this is how your new molecule looks like. Okay. And this is basically a trivalent nanobody compound that consists of 2 anti-human TNF-alpha nanobodies and 1 serum albumin. And that gives its unique edge in terms of its mechanism of action. So this is one study, and this is from Japan, where it is basically a randomized open-label multi-center phase 3 clinical trials, 140 odd patients, where they primarily assessed with or without methotrexate its efficacy in rheumatoid arthritis. And compared to the placebo, in all the groups whether methotrexate was used or not used, you can see that compared to the placebo arm, where the agent was used, they have significant improvement both in ACR 20, which was the primary endpoint, and of course ACR 50 and 70. And this is again a graph which shows the changes from the baseline over time for all the different parameters listed over here. And this is in particular the HAC DI, and you can see that substantial improvement as compared to the placebo with or without methotrexate with this particular agent in rheumatoid arthritis. Then quickly moving on to the next one, this is IL-6 in polymyalgia rheumatica. So Serlumab is a fully human anti-IL-6 monoclonal antibody. This agent has been in use in rheumatoid arthritis, but the uniqueness here is that now there is evidence that it is actually helpful in polymyalgia rheumatica also. So this was a study presented at EULAR, and I have not included that, but in the ACR also. And you can see that this was 52 weeks treatment. The agent arm, and comparative arm. And the idea here was to, when you introduce this agent in your patients with polymyalgia rheumatica, at the same time you start to plan the steroid taper. So steroid taper was one of the primary endpoint, proportion of patients achieving sustained remission at week 22. So disease remission by week 12 and the absence of disease flare, and as per protocol, glucocorticoid withdrawal from week 12 to 52. So the idea is, if you use this agent, your steroid taper is going to not be detrimental to the disease course. And this is some of the results from this randomized control trial. So if you look at all the parameters, whether you look at sustained remission at week 52, so these are the endpoints as I discussed in the previous slide. And all the parameters of interest, you see that there has been a remarkable improvement compared to the comparator arm. Okay. Now, quickly moving on to the third exciting agent in question. This is again probably for some of you it's a bit old news, but there you are. So you got antibody binding of blood dendritic cell antigen 2. And the uniqueness about this is expressed exclusively on the plasmacytoid dendritic cells, and that's why it is an agent of interest for treating systemic lupus erythematosus. So you got subcutaneous agent, and which is again a fully humanized monoclonal antibody that binds to this BDCA2. And two landmark trials published in NEJM earlier this year. And this is basically focusing on the clinical parameters related to lupus. The primary endpoint was changed from the baseline in the total number of active joints. So this is a matter of debate when you assess the overall relevance and the validity of this study, because using active joints as a primary endpoint in a trial of systemic lupus erythematosus, the related efficacy is always, but again, the secondary endpoints were changes in cutaneous and global disease activity, and very quickly the results compared to the placebo when the agent was used. The primary endpoint, which was the number of active joints, definitely came down, but most of the secondary endpoints did not support the analysis from the primary endpoint, and the problem here was, again, it happened that it was not powered to answer the questions related to the secondary endpoints. But if you consider the active joints in patients with lupus, very effective compared to the placebo. Now, I think just to put everything into a proper context, the second part of my talk is, I'll talk briefly about the agents I have good experience in using in India. And our original chair, Dr. Neeraj Jain, is not here, and I just want to highlight this book brought out by Dr. Duggal and Dr. Neeraj Jain, Handbook of Biologics and Rheumatological Disorders. Please do get a copy, ask him to send you a copy. This is, I think, everything you want to know about biologicals, as of now. Now, so all the agents I have discussed, we are about 5 to 10 years from getting them. And 5 to 10 years in Western countries, and when the patent expires or the companies decide that India is the right market, then it will be available. So the time frame could be 10 to 20 years for most of these agents to our country. And the example you can see here, you got at the very bottom, you got MabThera, which is the rituximab. So, the patent has expired in 2016, 2018, and it is only then you got the biosimilar versions available in India. So we can talk about a lot of new molecules, But for all practical purposes, that is actually mostly for a theoretical knowledge. It does improve our understanding of how the disease works, how the molecules work. So we have done in India, our colleagues have done substantial work as far as rituximab is concerned. So this is an agent, I remind you, we took up when the patent expired, and even before that, when an Indian company bought out rituximab way back in 2007. So the studies listed here have used both the innovator and the biosimilar version of rituximab. And our own experience related to biosimilar rituximab, and also showing that the seronegativity does not have any impact used in such a way in rheumatoid arthritis. So the point I want to make is that you look at the rituximab usage in India, even after 10, 12 years, you got 75,000 plus patients only. And this is biosimilar and innovators combined. So what we did was a way forward for you. So we got our own consensus statement from India related to the use of rituximab in rheumatoid arthritis. And this consensus statement covers all the aspects of rheumatoid arthritis treatment with rituximab, including from indications to the future research agenda. So I would say that this is something which is useful when you consider biological agents in their entire context, which has a relevance to India. So in conclusion, I just like to state that yes, it is agreed that this is actually exciting times for biologicals in rheumatological musculoskeletal disease in rheumatology. But the reality is that there is a long gap for either affordable biosimilar or targeted synthetic DMARDs becoming available to your patients with immunological diseases in India. So the whole thing is that we need our own experience, which should enable us to formulate specific guidelines or statements which has relevance to our own country and which should pave the way for enhanced usage. Thank you. And I would like to invite all of you to the rheumatology master classes going to be held at Jaipur next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ravindra. I invite questions from the audience.
So it also opens up that we have a person who has done enormous work on the cytokine pathway, and I believe Professor has done enough and more molecules that will be coming up. So if we see the natural history of these biological therapies, it is somewhat getting truncated, and we are not going to experience a new molecule and we are not excited. We are all looking at the targeted small molecule. So what is your take? What we want to know is what you feel.
Yes, because the TNF-alpha and IL-6 is a very good target in rheumatoid arthritis. So the company are trying to make a new targets like a GMCS receptor. However, it is working in MTXIR and some other subset of patients, but it failed to demonstrate efficacy in BIOIR. So now many people are demanding the new targets that is acting on the BIOIR. Bio means a TNF or IL-6 receptor IR. But we did not find any new good candidate molecule in that area.
So a lot of new molecules, Japan is sort of leading the way in terms of their clinical trials and the clinical usage.
Yes.
As you have shown in the guidelines you have in, what's the reason for that? I mean,
because there is a Japanese specific CSD mount and Japanese specific rank-ligand monoclonal. So we need to create our own guideline in addition to a Euro guideline or ACR guideline.
I think this is a very relevant point, Professor.
Yes, sir, please.
It was a very good presentation. For last 18 years, I have attended many sessions on biologicals, And I've observed that biologicals are either compared with placebos or methotrexate, or in those patients who have not responded adequately to methotrexate. So I wanted to know, can you tell us about any trial in which biologicals have been compared with a combination of DMARDs, 2 or 3 DMARDs, head to head? Is there any such study?
I think there are quite a few. I mean, methotrexate is the most common comparator, apart from placebo, because methotrexate is basically, the gold standard, right? It's the key molecule for many rheumatological diseases, especially rheumatoid arthritis. But there are studies where inadequate responder to combination DMARD therapies have been compared with biological agents, and there are head-to-head trials of several other biological agents who would be on methotrexate adjuvant therapy compared to the new molecules. So they are there, but I agree, probably not that many.
There are a few older, in fact very old trials, like the BEST trial, which is compared combination synthetic DMARDs with TNF inhibitor. There is also the TARE trial, which is compared TNF inhibitor with the combination synthetic DMARDs. There's RACAT, there is SWEETFORT. There's also SWEETFORT.
The trials are the two things. One is that the companies are looking at the regulatory approval. That is the benchmark they want to achieve.
So actually most of the combination synthetic DMARD trials versus biologic are investigator initiated and not pharma driven, and that's the big difference. And one of the, I think the recurring finding in all these trials has been that if you look at it over a longer period of time, if you look at conventional synthetic DMARDs versus a biologic over a slightly longer duration of time, if you look at the outcome at probably 6 months, most of them tend to be equivalent. However, the time taken to get there or to reach a target is probably longer when you use just combination synthetic DMARDs. And this we are talking about methotrexate naive patients. However, in methotrexate inadequate responders, definitely the data will be slightly different. So, depends on the subset you are describing, but there is sufficient data to say that in a methotrexate naive RA patient, combination synthetic DMARDs do just as well as biologic, and there seems to be no rationale to immediately start biologic, although there are trials who have used biologic as a first line in a naive patient.
I will simplify that. See, so in your clinical practice, you would be doing a trial because you would have actually, put the patients on combination therapy anyway before you will be using the biological agents. Okay. So the trials are mostly to, satisfy the regulatory approvals before it becomes available to our patients.
Thank you. Thank you. There's Sweden as I think Nordic country have a lot of real-world data regarding combination DMARD therapy and biologics. So they say that the clinical response is almost similar, but when they compare the radiological progression, I think biologics did better.
So actually there is this other concept in RA that we are all very familiar with, that it does not matter how you get to the target, it's the target that is more important. When you look at best data even between after achieving the target, that is, I think they have their outcomes, slightly longer term outcomes, the damage accrual in patients who have achieved remission, once they achieve remission, is not different between the two groups. So the entire damage accrual occurs because of the rapidity of response to a biologic agent, which is in the first, because obviously a conventional synthetic DMARD will take about 3 to 6 months to have its full effect. So there you are actually, when you look at it in a larger study, that's where the entire damage accrual. When you look at it in terms of simply, if you're looking at Sharp score, and this is probably the argument I have, you're looking at one extra erosion to get the statistical significance. Is that statistical significance of clinical significance to you in terms of, does it actually translate to a worse outcome, having one extra erosion? So that's, I think, a debate.
I'll make it simple. So the two arms of best trial we are interested in, where the steroid was used along with disease modifying drugs, and where the infliximab was used. So 10-year data shows that the responses are actually similar. Okay, they were not similar compared to the other at the beginning of the trial when it was initially reported, but the 10-year data for both the arms are actually basically similar. So the critical message for all of us, we know that, is just to underscore that it is the initial phase of the disease, reducing the inflammatory burden is paramount. Okay, and that is what the Indian reality is really. we should be working on that.
So I'm going to ask Professor Takushi, how do you take train from Tokyo to Osaka? You want the fast train or the slow train?
The fast train.
The fast train. So the biologicals are required. That's the answer.
And
We reach
also,
fast.
yeah,
And if it is safe, we reach
Yeah.
fast.
And in
Yeah.
Europe,
But it depends who's paying for the train journey.
Also, yeah, very important aspect.
yeah, in Euro guideline, they do recommend MTX monotherapy rather than combination.
Yeah.
Because when you combine 3 CSD month, the side effect is triple. And the retention rate for combination is very low, around 30% at 6 months in Euro data. So that they recommend MTX monotherapy plus glucocorticoid or short-term bridging in order to stop inflammation,
Yeah.
to take a rapid train.
I think that more or less reflects practice in India in the sense that we would all start off with methotrexate. But right now, at the present point that we are, where we have the option of targeted synthetic DMARDs, or we have a subset of patients also who are affording biologics, I think most of us have gone on the path of choosing a biologic rather than a combination synthetic DMARD.
We'll have a group photograph.
No, but if you see the data then, what works the best? ACR say 50. So you have a targeted therapy with methotrexate. It happens to be baricitinib with methotrexate, gives you around 47%, ACR 50. And if you combine rituximab with methotrexate, around 46. So your two best agents happens to be a targeted therapy and a biological to achieve ACR 50. This is a long term. So this also gives an avenue to utilize the science. It's cost effective. The biosimilars in India, which Dr. Vinod said, it's quite cheap compared to any other world. If someone wants to come to India just to take biological called rituximab, this is the best place. And if you can take biosimilars when the patents are off, this would be the best agents. This is my opinion.
I think that this debate will never end, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Takuchi, Dr. Ravindran. It was a very good interactive session.
Sir,
Yes,
a
we should
photograph.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah,
really grateful.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed.
If you get a Nobel Prize, what will you do?
Yes, this.
We will say that. We will show the photograph. Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you in the evening for the
Thank
dinner.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have a dinner tonight?
Yes.
Oh, it was for me. Oh, okay. No.
It starts at 8.
Oh, okay. Go.
Nice session. Nice.
Yes, लेके जा रही है.
उदास दिख के
नहीं आज तुमने भी बड़ा अच्छा उसमें एकदम एक छोटा
एग्जाम के लिए
पढ़ते हैं ना
अभी तो निकला नहीं दिमाग से
वैसे भी वो मैम बेस्ट इतना लंबा ट्रायल है उसको पढ़ के
Oh my God, कितनी बार पढ़ा है।